Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm test driving some technology with which I'm not particularly familiar, so if you'll give me a chance to figure this out, I appreciate that. We'll just make sure everything's where we need it to be, generally speaking. And we're testing. Good? Wonderful. Folks here okay? Generally? Good. Glad to hear it. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Engen. I work for the city, and I really appreciate you all coming down to the Broadway building this evening for this town meeting. I was just talking with Bob Struckman from the Missoulian, and the reason we're here tonight is because this is a complex project that's been on lots of folks' minds, and we've been working on alternatives for some time now. And I wish that process went faster, but it doesn't. So this is another step as we move forward. What you see before you this evening are a number of alternatives, a 3-lane alternative for West Broadway from Orange Street to Russell Street, a 4-lane alternative, and a 5-lane alternative. What we've done, ladies and gentlemen, is we've put these graphics up on the wall, these drawings of the proposed alternatives, and sticky notes, and you are more than welcome to plug a sticky note on there, give us ideas and suggestions as you see fit through the evening. This is going to be a fairly informal process, but we are filming, we're on MCAT, so that other folks who couldn't be here this evening in person can have a chance to hear what's on folks' minds and consider the alternatives. So when we do take comment, what I'm going to ask is that you come to the microphones that are in front. If you happen to be in a chair, we've got a microphone set up for you here, and other folks can just queue up and we can move through the process that way. We have a number of folks from the city here this evening. Public Works Director Steve King is here. Joe Oliphant from our Public Works Department. I may miss a few folks if I don't happen to see you. Chief Administrative Officer Bruce Bender. Phil Smith, our Bicycle Pedestrian Coordinator. Ginny Merriam, our Communications Officer. We have a number of City Council folks here. John Hendrickson is up here in front, as is Don Nicholson, representing Ward 2. Ed Childers, representing Ward 6. Richard Haynes, representing Ward 5. Am I missing? Bob Jaffe, tucked away in the back there, and Jerry Ballas, ladies and gentlemen. So these folks are here as well to listen to your comments and to speak as the mood strikes them. But with that, I'd like to introduce Steve King, and he can talk to you a little bit about these alternatives, how we arrived here, and kind of the constraints and opportunities that come with each of them. Steve.
Thank you, John. And this is going to be something let's talk. Hear me loud and clear? How's that? Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for the introduction, John. I'm going to go through what you see on the walls is what's cycling through, and I'm just going to describe the features of what you're seeing. There's basic differences in the number of lanes, lane configuration, the possibility of turning lanes, of raised medians, and much of that is illustrated on this information sheet. On this information sheet is frequently asked questions about the project, and you can certainly follow up after we run through our brief presentation. And then there's also a comparative analysis of just a kind of a list of some of the issues and topics, trying to be listing some of the observations for what we've seen as we lay out a 3-lane, a 4-lane, and a 5-lane roadway between the existing curbs within the existing right-of-way from Russell to Orange. So that's what we've got. Also, it's interesting to note on the wall in a couple of places we've got traffic volume information, and if you look at the dates on the bottom, and you look at that, on this side is the average daily volume of traffic, and then at different locations, on Broadway at 3 locations, on Spruce and on Toole, we've got before and after. Before we put the 3-lane change and after. And so we see a history of volumes there, and you can make your own conclusions as to what's happening. There's some interesting numbers as to the volumes on the streets, both through the corridor and adjacent to the corridor, Broadway corridor. So, Dan, if you can assist me in just, I'm just going to talk through some of these, and it'll, hopefully you'll be forming questions about what does this mean, and so when we hear from you, you'll know what we're talking about a 3-lane, 4-lane, and 5-lane. So the 3-lane at Russell Street, and everything's the same as it is now, essentially. Dan, next slide. Where things get interesting is in the vicinity of Toole and California. And this is what you see out in the area now. And I know that I'm pointing here, but it's the same on both ones. So you, if your vision's like mine, you might need to look for the closer one. Raised medians, left turn lane, and the left turn lane onto California Street. Here's one of the things that's not on the ground now is the stop sign to be removed at Toole for the westbound traffic. This will be, if this configuration goes, this would be a free right turn coming down Toole. Basically, with the lane addition, allows the stop sign to be completely removed. And so this would be a free right turn westbound. You see the pedestrian crossing, similar to what's there now, with ramps, a pedestrian refuge in the middle, and ramps on the other side. There's also a new island planned on Toole Street, a median island, to assist and facilitate crossing of Toole at this location. The island is basically in pin downs now, proposed to be poured in concrete if this option goes. And then this is the big thing that's not on the ground. At Burton Street, significant refuge island in the middle of the road to facilitate a new enhanced crossing location at Burton and Broadway. Turning movement modifications on Burton where it's right in and right out. The through movement across Burton for that low volume has been eliminated, but you can still make a left turn in, right turn out, but the left turn out of both areas would be eliminated to protect the crossings at that location. So those are the major features of the 3-lane as it's currently designed. Next slide, please. As we're heading to the east at Cedar, and there's, you know that we've got GMT in this vicinity, Scott Street. And what the 3-lane does, one of the primary features is there's a continuous 2-way left turn lane for business access, for the left turn movements onto the major street, onto the signals. There's also some pedestrian, there's ability throughout with the 3-lane for at various locations to have additional refuge islands. You see these in pin down, or excuse me, in some temporary facilities at the Scott Street area to try to reinforce that crossing protection at Scott Street. Next slide, please. The 3-lane continuing with the middle turning lane, across the railroad tracks, another potential location for pedestrian refuge, down to the Safeway area. Just as you see it now, features of bike lanes on both sides throughout the corridor, and on-street parking for the majority of the corridor. That the 3-lane preserves the business parking throughout the majority of the project. Next slide. And as we get to Orange Street, same features, bike lanes, 2-way left turn lanes, and parking as well. Next slide. And then the transition is basically as it is today with the overhead sign for guidance and the right turn only for the lane drop on the outside lane. Okay, that's the 3-lane. That's what's in its very preliminary configuration now. And talk with the mayor about some maintenance striping that we're planning for that as we get through the program. But that's what's the current configuration, and that's the departure point to another alternatives. And what we heard loud and clear was we want other alternatives for consideration. So that's what we've done is looked at a 4-lane, which is 2 lanes in each direction and a raised median in the center. The raised median has many advantages. It has the ability for landscaping, and there's certainly a potential for landscaping and lighting, and you don't don't have to look very far. Stevens Avenue is, I think, an excellent example of potential landscaping and lighting configurations. Now, the Stevens Avenue median is typically 14 feet wide, and we don't have the same width in between the existing curbs. I'll get to the question. On Broadway, we're talking about an 8-foot median, and that could vary in width. And the idea is to maintain the 2 lanes in both directions. We would vary the width of the median. We would stop the median for some turning movements at major streets. But the median would restrict turning movements at some of the existing driveways and minor streets. It has a traffic calming effect and the ability to have a tree canopy, lighting, interest feature in the middle of the roadway to create a gateway into the neighborhood. We'll talk about that more when we talk about charrette, but we're talking about a multi-feature. It's functional for traffic management, and it has significant potential for aesthetic enhancement, for beautification of the corridor. So Dan, could you start? Again, Russell as our anchor and our starting point, no changes as we head to the east. Next slide, please. And so here we have the 2 lanes eastbound, 2 lanes westbound. We've got the left turn onto California, the left turn onto Toole. We still have a stop sign. Here's one of the differences. Because we don't have a lane addition here, we have to stop traffic as it is now, and have that stop sign be preserved. But we would be able to build a pedestrian refuge island to assist the crossing of Toole Avenue, but we lose the pedestrian refuge island for crossing Broadway at this location. We move that emphasis for crossing down to Burton Street. And we've heard that Burton, with its access to Eagle Watch, with its access to the riverfront via the Shady Grove Trail. If you've never been on the Shady Grove Trail in the riverfront area, it's beautiful. Take a lunch hour. Go down to, I think it's Lions Park and the Shady Grove Trail on the riverfront. It's worth getting around that way on purpose. It leads you to the California Street footbridge. It leads you to Russell Street and the Russell Street Bridge. And so Burton Street, even though it's kind of inconspicuous as a crossing, if you were just to look at it from Broadway, you may not suspect. You go down to the end of Burton, and you're at the riverfront trail system. And it's a significant asset for linking north and south and aesthetics along the riverfront. And so the crossing at Burton, crossing 2 lanes. There's no ability for bike lanes or parking in this vicinity. Of course, there's no parking in any of the configurations here, but there's no bike lanes or parking. You cross the 2 lanes, would have a refuge island, and cross 2 more lanes of traffic. Next slide, please. See, this is an illustration of the continuous raised median with a break for turning movement at Cedar. And this is just one possibility of breaks. There could be more breaks, there could be less breaks. We're trying to have an illustration to have the effect of the 4-lane with the medians. We're illustrating continuous raised median. So here's the raised median. Could be landscaped and lit, but it obviously makes turning movements out of businesses. Again, GMT for an example of a right in and right out only. There would be no left turn. This is a concrete median. The question was how high? This is a 6-inch curb. Could be colored concrete, landscaping, shrubbery, trees, you name it, for what could go in there. So it's a physical barrier in the roadway, and again, as a proposed configuration. We can drop the raised median and create the left turn pocket at Scott Street. Let's go to the next slide. The red line you see going through this, we couldn't get rid of that. That's just the center line of the roadway. It's just left over. There's a few pieces left over here. So here we are at the railroad tracks. Again, the raised median throughout. Let's keep going. Here we are at the front street, and of course you'd be able to make your turn on the front, make your turn out of McCormick from the hospital complex, make your left turn onto Broadway from Front Street, and so on. But you wouldn't be able to make the left turn off again, off of Broadway to front. And of course, that's a little used move. There's one option would be to run the median across Owen Street, which is on the east side of the hospital, to create that potential for landscaping, gateway, entry treatment. As you come off of Orange Street intersection, we'd have the left turn pocket at Orange Street. Next slide. 5-lane. So where are we going to start? Russell Street? Of course. Next slide. So here's Russell Street, no changes, but this is our anchor. So through all of the alternatives, all of the turning movements and business accesses under all alternatives are the same on the 3-lane, 4-lane, and 5-lane in the vicinity of Mountain Water and the businesses to the west of Cowper, I believe. Next slide. So a significant left turn pocket. Here's a full left turn pocket. Again, we have some ability for that same refuge island stop sign at Toole Refuge Island. Again, left turns here. And this is not a bike lane. This is just the shoulder or the fog line edge of the roadway. So again, no parking, no bike lanes, no pedestrian refuge at this crossing location. Again, we have the opportunity at Burton Street for those same features of pedestrian crossing, refuge, limited turning movements, and this either could be a left turn pocket moving through, or it could be a raised median and the pedestrian refuge is illustrated. This is what's under consideration, is creating this major crossing from the north side and from Broadway to the riverfront and vice versa. Next slide, please. Again, you see the continuous left turn, 2 lanes in both directions. The left turn obviously accommodates the business accesses. That's with both the 3-lane and the 5-lane alternative, similar business access features with the turning movements. Again, no parking, no bike lanes throughout the corridor. Next slide. Railroad crossings, again, in some locations there certainly is, with a 5-lane configuration, possibility for refuge islands, maybe at the vicinity of the railroad crossing. And next slide. And what is in the hospital vicinity in between McCormick and Owen, where you see some of the flexible delineators. There could be a refuge island in this block as well. What you see, though, is there's parking by the hospital, but effectively all of the other parking comes off, and the bike lane goes away from Orange to Russell. So that's it. Wanted to lay that out for you for talking points, and what I'm interested in hearing, and I've got an opportunity to tell you what I'd like to hear is, what are the features you'd like to preserve? What features are you concerned about losing? What action would you like us to take as a next step? We've got a lot of possibilities about where we're going to go from here. We're here to listen to you. And if you don't like anything, you can tell us that too. If there's the other issue that I haven't addressed of the traffic signal, let me just speak to that very briefly. We've asked the Department of Transportation to analyze traffic signal studies, a warrant analysis, if you will, for traffic signal on the corridor, and specifically at in the vicinity of California Toole to Burton Street. And what the department has said is, yes, there is potential for continuing discussion of a traffic signal. It could be in any one of these alternatives, or it could not be in any one. It's kind of an optional feature of a traffic signal at Toole and Broadway. So that's still on the table. It's not currently funded. It's not illustrated in any of the alternatives, but it certainly is an option with all of the alternatives.
And I was just going to suggest the same thing, Steve, so thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I was remiss. We have a number of other city council folks here who I missed, and I apologize for that. Marilyn Marler is with us, as is Heidi Kendall and Dave Strohmeyer. We also have some guests here from Craig Gunslinger from the Federal Highways Administration is here, and Dwayne Cayley and Shane Stack from the Montana Department of Transportation are here as well. And if I've missed anyone else, Dan Jordan is ably, our public works tech guru, is ably manning the PowerPoint there this evening. So you've heard about the alternatives that are before us. And I'm glad that Steve talked about the signal component, because I know that's been important as part of our conversations. I just talked to Dwayne Cayley from MDT and wanted to make sure that we weren't overstating the case, but the signal is clearly on the table, and the one we're talking the most about would be a signal at California Tool and Broadway. So before we kind of start taking some questions and suggestions, I do want to say that regardless of where we end up this evening and next steps, one of the things we do need to do, the State Department of Transportation is very interested in the confusion that's on the ground now, because our striping has faded away. So the city, under contract with the state, will be doing temporary striping to restore what's there, so as a safety issue until we move to the next step. So I just want folks to know that. Before we do that, we'll knock on businesses' doors. Our intention is to try to do it on a weekend so that we're not interfering with large traffic volumes and your business activities. So, and we're going to try to get that done sooner than later. It's simply a safety issue. So folks aren't sure where they ought to be today, and that's something we need to take care of. So with that, I'd invite folks, anybody and everybody, come on up to the microphone. We've got the room booked all evening, ladies and gentlemen. But out of courtesy for your neighbors, you might want to try to keep your remarks relatively concise. And folks, you don't even need to raise your hand. What I'm going to ask you to do is, because we are recording this, if you'd be so kind as to come up to one of these 3 microphones, please have a seat and just identify yourself and go right ahead. Yes, sir. Wherever you're comfortable, you bet. We can get you on film if you...
Can you hear me? No. Well, I'll just yell. What's that? Push the little button. You're a pro, Bob. There you go. Hi, I am a driver and a bicyclist and a pedestrian sometimes, but mostly I bike and drive. So I just want you all to know that those are 2 things I do a lot of. And I do drive a very large truck and trailer. I do the pickups for Home Resources, so I'm over on this side of town picking things up. And I just want you all to know that I've had no problem getting in and out onto that road, onto Broadway, from all the side streets. I think I've probably tried every single one. I'm a big fan of Big Sky drive-through, so it's not a problem with 45 feet of vehicle, you know, with lots of heavy stuff on it. But in addition to that, I'm concerned about the intersection there at Tool, and I want everybody who's going to cross that street to be safe, to be able to be safe. So that's really my biggest concern, outside of being a driver and or a bicyclist. That's my biggest concern. Everybody should be able to cross that street safely. And what I've noticed is that it's been significantly easier to do it in its current state. What's going on at that intersection with some of the raised markers that mark the median, I think that hides some of the people who are in wheelchairs. I think that inhibits the driver's ability to see people. Anything that we can do at the intersection to what they call traffic calm or traffic calming would be greatly appreciated. Color, signs, maybe a flashing sign over the street, I think would be a great idea. But to give good visibility, I think is most important. And I'd also think that keeping the speed limit at 25 all the way to Russell would be a great idea. I see no point in jumping it up to 35. It just doesn't seem to, I don't think, you know, we're always in a rush. I'm in a rush too, but, you know, I don't see anything gained at going to 35. And I think that a little bit slower, you get a chance to see that. There's also a motorcycle cop who frequents my street over there by Home Resource. Between 4 and 6, it's an illegal turn onto Kent Street from Stevens, and they make a lot of money in that 2 hours. So I think it would do wonders to have those motorcycle cops or other police officers over there at that intersection. I think in a couple of weeks of pretty regular patrolling, as we made this transition into keeping this a 3-lane road and accentuating the crossing there, that you would get a big response from drivers. They would slow down and they would open their eyes a little more than we have a tendency to do. I think that's all I wanted to speak to. Thanks for everybody showing up. It's great to see the citizens of Missoula. Thanks, John.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Just another note, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to thank the folks at St. Patrick Hospital and Health Sciences Center for providing coffee and water and a little decaf if you need it. And the good folks at the Doubletree gave us 200 cookies this evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't eat them, I'll have to, and I don't think anybody wants that. Shirley. Go right ahead, sure.
Push this, I guess, all right.
Yes, my name is Sheila James. I live on Broadway in Burton and at Eagle Watch, and I think if you would just increase the lighting down there and put stoplights in there, it'd be better than putting the raised medians in there, because when we have to drive down and we have to go one way and then make a whole loop to turn around to go where we want to go. And that makes it so hard because we have to spend so much time just trying to get through all this. And as far as putting your nice trees and all your stuff there, all it's going to do is block it for people like myself who are short, who they can't see anyway. And so I would suggest that you do away with your beautification thing, because that won't work. Because I like a nice street as much as anybody else. But I also, if you want to do that, you might as well I'll go outside after this is over, and I'll let you just run me down now, and then I won't have to worry about it later.
That's not an option this evening. Thank you.
I had a little thing here too. Cowper Street, where it comes out onto West Broadway, that's going to be very dangerous if you have a three-way system where people can come off of Toole and barrel on down that street. How are people going to be coming west and turn into that street to go into come and go? We have limited visibility there anyway. You're not going to see if anybody's coming this way. There's going to be lots of wrecks or near wrecks, because that's just opening the door for everybody to come down Toole, and they don't care, and you can't see to cross.
And it's just going to make it hard.
And please stripe it soon. I have people telling me I'm in the wrong lane. I have people honking at me all the time because I'm trying to follow where the street is, and they're trying to pass me on the right.
Get that. And I'm not taking notes, but I can guarantee someone in the room is, so thank you. Step right up, folks, please. And questions are appropriate as well? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Terry Rice, and I live in the neighborhood. I also work in the neighborhood. Aesthetics is really great in a residential area. I would be all for it. But when you have as much traffic as what we see on Broadway, there's no place for it. To me, it's like okaying a woman to put her makeup on while she's driving. You don't really want to see a tree. You want to see the oncoming traffic. So I think that we should eliminate that, make it a 5-lane, put a light on Burton Street so those folks can cross it properly, and keep the stop sign on Toole Avenue. And I think it would be a very good idea if we put a 25 mile an hour from Madison to Mullen. It would slow traffic down, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Michael Bremer. I drove professionally in this town for 10 years, much like the gentleman there in a semi-big rig. And when I didn't drive, and I don't drive now, but I'm an exclusive bike rider and a walker. When I have gone through there, which I do limited driving for where I work now, it hasn't slowed anything down. I've been through there at the heart of 5 o'clock traffic, the heart of noon traffic. It hasn't done anything there. When you're driving in a truck and you have 2 lanes, you're constantly having to look this way and look that way, and your eyes aren't on the road, which becomes a danger at that point in time. When you have 4 lanes, or 2 each coming each way, people are going to want to pass you, and they're going to speed. If you drop the mileage down to 25 miles an hour, they're not going to adhere to it. You're just going to have to use more policemen to patrol that area to keep them to do that. The intersection on Stevens Avenue, which I won't discount, is a very pretty, with the medium and stuff in there. But when I say I walk, I also live off Franklin there. And when you get up there and people see you, you got your courteous drivers and they'll stop, but you also got the ones that, in essence, you got 2 streets to cross at that point in time and not 1. I think the 3-lane highway is just the best option. I think we have a chance to move forward with some innovation and some creativity, and at least give it a chance. That's what we set out to do to begin with, and I think it should be adhered to and at least give this thing a chance to work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, everyone. My name's John Couch. I live on the west side, not too far from Broadway. I actually had a question. Maybe, Steve, you could help me on this. And I'm looking at your features chart here on the lane systems. And down at the bottom, and I'm sure it wasn't put there purposely, but it asks the question, does it meet the safety purpose? And then under each lane configuration, 3, 4, and 5, we have the good, medium, and poor. I'd really like to know again, what is the safety purpose? I mean, this whole thing precipitated over a reason, or reasons maybe, as to why we're doing this. And I'd like to know exactly what is our goal as far as the safety purpose goes, and what can we expect in the difference between safety, I'm assuming it's both pedestrian, cyclists, and vehicle safety, between good and poor. Because the word poor, when it comes to safety purpose, is a worrisome. Could you address that?
As we all know, we've talked about this many times. The reason that we initiated the project was through significant safety problems on crossing on Broadway. 5 fatalities, numerous injuries, the inability to cross at many hours of the day. And that was the origins of the project these many years ago. And so the result of our request from the local government to Department of Transportation was the recommendation for the 3-lane. It's been demonstrated to moderate speeds, to reduce pedestrian crossing exposure, provide business turning movements, while still maintaining the ability for bike lanes and other safety features. And so that's the origin of the project. And I think it's very important to remember why we got here today, is because of the previous 4-lane configuration in some sense was dysfunctional for safety operations, as illustrated by both accident frequency and pedestrian fatalities. This was intentionally put here as part of the comparative analysis of what our knowledge is for potential accident frequency, pedestrian exposure, the features we've talked about. 3-lane obviously has less conflict points, less crossing distance as compared to the 4-lane. Obviously the 5-lane has more crossing distance as relative without crossing the median. And so this is intentionally for the discussion purposes, John. It was really intended to have you identify, and you can either agree or disagree, but this is what we've got from our experience with these systems.
My name is Mike Studi, and I live on the north side, and I'm a pedestrian and a cyclist and a motorist and all those above. My question is sort of a follow-up on that. If safety is your main criteria, why is the 5-lane even on the table? I would encourage the city to look at safety as the first and foremost criterion for any road design. And I feel the 3-lane has not been given a real chance thus far. It's kind of been set up to fail, and it's kind of doing that. And so I would encourage to finish the job and take any option that does not deal with safety off the table.
Thank you.
My name's Bob Giordano, and I run a nonprofit called Missoula Institute for Sustainable Transportation. And I'm really vested in this community and the roads, and have a passion for finding solutions that are safe and can keep traffic flowing. And I think the 3-lane can do that if we can finish this project, what we started, the lanes wearing away, not having the pedestrian crossings, not having the landscaping. The Scott Street signals are in the old 4-lane configuration, so motorists are very confused when they get up to that signal, and sometimes they go back to a double queue. I was talking to someone who was biking on that yesterday, and she said a truck came into the bike lane and she felt like she was almost killed. And I would like to see this finished, given a fair shake. There was another pedestrian fatality in November in front of the Children's Theater, and that was in the 4-lane section. There was another woman who was hit near Mullen, and that was in January. These are after the 3-lane was done. The 3-lane was from Orange to Toole, and I checked with the fire department. There have been no pedestrians hit in the 5 months since it's been in. There's also been 0 motor vehicle injuries since this has gone in. And to give you some scope, before this went in over the previous 8.5 years, there was 37 pedestrians hit over 9 years on Broadway. 13 were in the section between Toole and Orange, the 3-lane we're talking about, and 24 were outside. So we've had 100% reduction in pedestrian hits, while there's still been 2 in the outside the 3-lane scope. Now granted, it's only been 5 months, so we can't make a strong conclusion from that, but everything's leading towards this is working, and I can only think if we can finish it. And I thank the city and I thank the state for initiating this and taking this topic of safety and moving people without running into each other seriously. I thank you for that. I guess I'll just, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to add. Well, this has worked in 80 other cities, and I don't think Missoula is any different if we can finish it, if we can stripe it and make it, I think we can make it a beautiful road, and I think that would take away a lot of the confusion. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Brown from Eagle Wanted States 2 at 575 Burton. And I think we should give the 3 lanes a chance, because when we put it together a little late in the season. We did the striping and everything right before the snow flew and stuff. So I think we need to give it a chance. Maybe not put cement down and everything right now to see if we need to change it. But I do believe we need a chance, because I'm a wheelchair user, and I get out during the winter in the van and stuff, but I don't go out very much on my own in the winter without somebody with me. But once it gets nice out, I will travel on my own. I go with my friends and stuff too, but I would like to go on my own, but we haven't had very much good weather yet. So I would like to see how it really did work before we tore it all up and tried again. And then when I adjust, that we just try it. But don't make anything permanent that we can have to dig up or whatever if it doesn't work. And talk about it next fall again or next spring. Sure.
This may be spring today.
Yeah, really scary.
Hi, I'm Kate Keller, and I work on the north side and travel from East Missoula, so I spend a good deal of time traveling on Broadway, cycling and otherwise. Plenty of time in my vehicle as well. I guess I would speak in favor also of the completion of the project before we make any adjustments to it, because I do believe that it has improved safety and improved livability in the whole area that it's been implemented. I'm here to read a letter from Nancy Wilson, who couldn't be here this evening as it is her birthday and she's going out to dinner with her family. As I've said before, dear Mary Engen and others at the Broadway meeting tonight, as I have said before, I believe this is a life and death issue. The truth is that even the poorly done three-lane has saved lives. There have not been any pedestrian deaths since it's been put in. Traffic is slowed. You can safely cross the street. Road noise has decreased, and you can bike on Broadway. Not quite safely yet, as the white lane has reappeared and many do not get that it is one lane of traffic. This will only improve with the finished project in place. As a community, we need to decide if life is important to us. Now, with that said, I would like to comment on the economic growth that could come to this community with this project and with future projects that say that Missoula is a unique community that places quality of life before hurry-up pace of anywhere America. Over and over again, you will see that communities that take the high road and decide that traffic counts are not the most important force come out ahead. These communities have become places that people want to live and businesses want to be. I've lived in this neighborhood since 1986, and I've seen many businesses in this area along Broadway. To design a road to make the current businesses happy, when actually the 4-lane road will only rush their businesses to Reserve Street, is just foolishness. Successful business will come to the area if we develop it to focus on people activity. We have a chance to highlight the river, make the whole corridor a loved and safer place. Let's start now with a project that is paid for and ready to go. Take a chance and move forward with this project. Let's give the final project a chance. I think it will not only save lives, but it will be an economic stimulus. Thank you. Nancy Wilson, 1402 Phillips. And I couldn't agree with Nancy more in the humanization of West Broadway.
Hi, I'm Lori Ashley, a resident of the West Side neighborhood, and for the past 4 years, I've crossed from either Cowper or Toole onto the California Street on my bike almost every weekday to and from work. The 3-lane configuration has made me feel more comfortable at that crossing, but I think there's still a lot of work to do. First of all, to complete the project, put the bike lanes and the crossings in place, and second of all, to really consider the bike ped path across Toole. I think it's in place across Broadway, but if you're crossing Broadway to the north, you come to Toole and really dead end there. Meanwhile, cars are making that left-hand turn from Broadway, sort of northeast onto Toole. So I think there needs to be further consideration of the bike ped crossing there, and I think we should go ahead and start what we finished with the 3-lane. As a bicyclist crossing there regularly, I feel more comfortable with the 3 lanes. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Betty Jane Larson, and I've lived in this area since 1950. And I know that our city is growing, and this thing really concerns me. We are going to have more and more traffic. Does that put all of the other traffic in all of the other streets to get downtown, or how are they going to get there? I think this plan for 4 and 5 lanes both have a real big block on it when there's no bike lanes. You know that won't fly. Of course they need bike lanes. I don't know who planned it, but it's, you know, they should have it too. They had it before. There's some improvement on Broadway now. There's going to be more, and that's great. We definitely needed to do something about this. We didn't need deaths to do it. It was something that needed to be done. And there isn't anyone that doesn't have a lot of sympathy with the people who lost their lives. And that's why we're here, and we're wanting to correct these things. Unless you want to make downtown a sidewalk mall, I think we need 4 lanes on Broadway. That's the north or the east and west cross through town. How else are you going to go? You can't go through the university. And the new light should be on, there should be a new traffic light, and possibly I think there should be a pedestrian lane for that home that was built where it probably shouldn't have been built in the first place. It is a very dangerous place for them. They're very handicapped people. They need every bit of our help. And I think that perhaps the second light would be a real big thing to think about for you people who came from the state of Montana as well as Missoula County and city folks. I thank you all. This really needs some serious study, and we hope that something good comes soon. The speed can certainly be controlled, and I don't think anybody would object to the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I thank you.
Hi, my name's Marcy Bremer, and I was reviewing this. I'm a biker, walker. I also use the city bus transportation, and I'm a licensed driver. And as I was looking at this, I have some great concerns about the no bike lanes whatsoever on the 4 and the 5. Along with the bus pullouts, I see nothing. It says no and no here on that, which is also a great concern. Access, we're trying to get people in Missoula to walk, bike, and ride, and use our city transportation. If there's no pullouts or ways for people to get on and off, I don't think that would be acceptable. I also am seeing here that we've already put out $160,000 already paid onto this project. We already have the current funds at $460,000 to be utilized. And basic construction costs, as everybody can read, are $300,000. So if I was to look at the unknown and unknown, I think that we should go forward, give this a good hearty try, see how it works, implement it. You know, personally, I don't think you can have that area utilized for all your residents in Missoula without bike lanes. That's just not something that can happen. And along with the bus pullouts. Our city transportation is very important, and it needs to be utilized for our air quality and for people, and I thank you.
I'm Donna Schaefer, and I live on the north side, and I agree without the bike lanes and the bus pullouts, it's almost like they wrote this up to make sure it wouldn't fly, wouldn't go. Well, we're not going to have airplanes, but it wouldn't go. But I want to address the idea of having a charrette. I've been around city council, and I was a member of the city council for a while, and I've been around politics long enough to know that charrettes are not the great answer to everything. What they are is another meeting with a professional referee or whatever you want to call him. But they aren't going to do anything at charrettes that we have not already done at least 3 meetings besides the committee meetings and the city council. It's ideas for businesses, recreation, transportation, pedestrians, bicyclists, and cars. Well, all you familiar faces that have been here and at other meetings know that we have talked and talked and talked about all those already. A charrette is not going to solve and probably not bring in a lot of new ideas. I always like the definition for an expert. It's somebody from out of town with a briefcase. But 9 times out of 10, he's going to turn to the local man or woman and ask for the answer to the questions. Don't put a lot of faith in it.
chair here. If you want to speak, please queue up. I'm going to put a chair over here. If you want to speak, please queue up. And the next speaker, please come up. How's that? I'll help you through this. That's why I'm here. Mr. Harris, please. Next speaker, you want to speak? Come on up. Anybody on this side want to speak next? Please come up.
My name is Doug Harrison. I work with Mountain Water Company. I just have a question for Steve. There seems to be quite a bit of development going out west, off Mullen Road and off West Broadway on out. Do you have like projections, 5-10-year projections for traffic? And coming down here tonight, the stream was pretty solid between Toole and St. Pat's, and I'm just wondering how that'll play out 5 years from now or 10 years from now.
It's a good question. Yes, we have projections for traffic volume increases over time, and certainly know that the 3-lane capacity will be breached in the foreseeable future. We look to any type of a plan and project with a 20-year design horizon, and our projections are that the 3-lane would not make the 20-year, that there would need to be additional modifications, either a 4-lane or 5-lane system, eventually on Broadway. Under current volumes and capacities, the 3-lane meets a need after a fashion, and we all know that fashion. You can bring your opinions to how it's working. But we know that over time with growth, that we'll need to have additional lane capacity on Broadway.
Thanks, John. My name is Bill Hoffman. I'm a business owner on West Broadway. I'm not an expert, and I'm not from out of town. In fact, I was born on this property in the early 50s. Sounds to me like we're trying to build a park, a city park. This is a roadway we're trying to improve to move large numbers of vehicles through our community. Okay? And that's what we try and go back and reconcile with the need for pedestrian safety, not motor vehicle safety, although that's part of the equation, not bicycle safety, although that's part of the equation. It's pedestrian safety. And what we have out there has been safe for the last 5 months until today. And if you're not aware of it, we had another accident out there today, just west of Toole. I'm sure those details will be made available very soon. But some of the business owners were unfortunately in the front seat of witnessing that. We talk about the completion of the 3-lane, and my concern all along is the moving a volume of traffic as efficiently as possible down Broadway. 2 abreast, 3 abreast, 8 abreast. I don't care, as long as we can get those vehicles down and out of our way as quickly as possible, then we've accomplished the task of moving the traffic. What we have now is certainly some significant issues with the 3-lane not being completed to keep people from passing each other, and I've been passed on the inside and the outside. And it happens to most of us that live on West Broadway. That is certainly going to make driving West Broadway easier and less confusing, but it doesn't address traffic volume. Okay, we still have to move the same number of vehicles from one end to the other. Okay, so I don't understand how taking the pin-down curbs and turning them into embedded concrete in the pavement and striping and signs is going to make it any different than it is now, other than it's going to be less stressful. And certainly road rage is going to be a component, has been a component of West Broadway all along. One concern I have is we go back to the pedestrian safety, and we've talked about 4 lanes and 5 lanes, and I agree with Mayor Engen. I mean, as a business owner, I'd love to have something like Stevens, not necessarily exactly what Stevens is, but something like that as an entryway into our community from the west. You know, it's the only east-west arterial through town. It would be wonderful if it was one of the most attractive streets in Missoula. And I'd love to go that direction, and many of the business owners have talked about it. However, we've been led all along to believe that there probably is not sufficient room and certainly not sufficient money to do that. I think many of us would prefer to see a 5-lane, if we can do it. It gives us a couple of important things: the opportunity to take care of left hand turn issues, okay, and then the refuge in the middle of the road. And that confuses me, as we heard earlier this evening, about a 5-lane being a poor option to meet safety purposes. If we've got refuges in the middle of the road for pedestrians to cross the road safely, I don't know how we go from good to poor so quickly by changing it from a 3-lane to a 5-lane. But if we've got room to consider a 5-lane, I know there's a great many of us that would like to see that explored, from one end to the other and find out if it is viable. I think it works both for the business owners. I think we move traffic more efficiently. We move more vehicles more quickly, and I can't for the life of me understand how that isn't a better option for pedestrians. Certainly traffic lights would help, but if we can build refuges along the way, it's got to increase safety. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Hello, I'm Benjamin Polly. I'm actually a resident of Flathead County. And when I think of any city in the USA or the world, the ones that stand out to me are the most friendly for pedestrians and bikes. When I think of safety, safety should be the biggest concern for people today and future citizens of Missoula. We need a plan that promotes safety for pedestrians of all sorts, from people walking to and from work, to shoppers and consumers, whether they are walking, biking, driving, or handicapped. For a community to be thriving and full of life, it has to be inviting to people who don't drive or can't drive, as well as those that do. But also, a town to be vital, it needs to be bike-friendly and pedestrian-friendly. A vital town needs people out walking and interacting with each other, not just hustling and bustling to get by with a wave and nothing real to say, but to be really human. We should strive to be the best city in the U.S. Thank you. Thank you.
Matt Ellis, 412 West Alder. I had a quick comment and I got 3 questions for Steve or somebody from the city that I'll ask all 3 in a row, and then I'll sit down and let you answer them. First off, it's obvious that the system we had before didn't work from a safety standpoint. And it's obvious because we're here today that the 3-lane system isn't working for some people in the community as well. So my hope is that as a community we think out of the box. I'm a little worried that we pigeon ourselves into 3 lanes, 4 lanes, and 5 lanes and just kind of have blueprints up here where we maybe make it one or the other instead of thinking out of the box and finding ways to combine everybody's needs into one. We definitely have a business issue with the 3-lane. We actually, so I'm just hoping that we can maybe try to break down some of the barriers between these and find ways to maybe combine some of the features of that's good for each of these areas and find a way to make it work. Which leads to some of my questions. Steve, on the safety purpose, I'm assuming it's based on these 3 the way they're put up here. How does the safety purpose change for the 3 different scenarios if we do things to augment each of them? Like, for example, we improve lighting, we make street lights where they can actually walk across, or pedestrian crossings and that kind of stuff. So that's one question. Number 2, I heard landscaping, trees and stuff. What is the landscaping plan? Is it trees? I mean, I would assume we're going to put shrubs and some nice low-level stuff and not, not build a tree line. But I'd like to know what that is. And then the other question I have is, one of my concerns being with the Downtown Association is we've been real concerned that how traffic was going to flow through downtown with this. And one of the things I noticed on the traffic flows up there is in December '04 we had about 22,000 vehicles go through Orange and Broadway, and on December '05 we had 14,000. Why is that drop off in your opinion? And do you know where they're going, or are they just not going to downtown, I guess is my question. Thanks.
I'd be happy to answer. There's 3 questions about the volumes. We'll take that one first. We've got a mix of volumes on the corridor, and there is a drop-off, a noticeable, measurable drop-off on Broadway at Orange Street. And there's several different possibilities. There's rerouting onto Front, there's rerouting onto Spruce and Toole corridor. There's less people using that east-west corridor, maybe choosing to use the interstate to access downtown. So there's a lot of speculation. We don't have all the information as to where they're going, but we know that there's a drop at that one location. What's interesting is that middle of the project and at the west end of the project, down by Russell Street, the volumes are steady. those ends of the project. So we've got some divergence of traffic volumes on the east end. We've got steady traffic volumes on the west end. As far as landscaping, this is simply a generic kind of a $3 a square foot and yet to be decided. Very appropriately, we hire professional landscape architects instead of letting the city engineer or public works director design the landscaping themes. And so for concerns about visibility, that would be addressed. For concerns about maintenance with our parks department, that would be addressed. There's a lot of possibilities with both tree species, maintenance, and varietal. That is really not the discussion today as to the aesthetics. The point is that with the 4-lane, that there's a possibility for landscaping, and we can quantify the volume of that landscaping as far as square footage and an approximate cost associated with that. Third question about mitigations. Good points that the 5-lane has the ability for mid-block refuge. The 5-lane also has, for the most part, continuous turning movements through the 2-way left turn lane in the center of the 5-lane. So that creates additional conflicts at many different locations for both vehicular turning movements and for pedestrians in that vicinity. These are relative of the trying to quantify the good, medium, and poor. And certainly if you had the super mitigated 5-lane with in-pavement lighting and super refuges and special treatments, if we wanted to bring that type of resource to a 5-lane, you can see what some of the possibilities are. But we also know that you can do the comparison of a 4-lane system on a Stevens Avenue compared to a 5-lane on other portions. We know the speeds are increased in the 5-lane, and therefore the reaction time of the drivers, the opportunity for stopping is decreased, and there's increased hazards. So there is some mitigation. I certainly acknowledge that. These are simply relative measures of all things being considered as far as crossing and for all modes of traffic, for the bikes, peds, and the cars as well. There's also a question about bike lanes. Why is the bike lane not in the 4 and 5 lane? The box that we're working in is the existing curb line. That's a big box. That's a solid concrete box. And to go for width for a 4-lane with medians, for a 5 lanes, within the existing curb lane, there is simply physically not enough room for bike lanes. The only alternative that has a current physical room for bike lanes is the 3-lane. That's one of the other safety features that we're trying to compare. So to put bike lanes on a 4-lane or 5-lane would take changing the curbs, and you can put $1 million dollar signs in front of the cost estimates, multi-million dollars for right-of-way acquisition and curb and drainage modifications to widen the road sufficient for bike lanes with the multi-lane alternatives.
Hi, my name is Andrea, and I'm currently living on the west side, and so I've been biking quite a bit across Broadway Street, and I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that were already said tonight. I think that it's essential to have the bike lanes. I don't think it should be an option to consider something without that, and so I do hope that you go ahead with a 3-lane plan. I think it would increase livability and safety. I think that the traffic congestion is not likely to drastically change if there were more lanes. It's just there's a lot of cars out there, and that's not really going to change until more alternative transportation modes are used by more people. And I also think that the traffic light may not improve any of that. I think it may just increase the congestion from Toole to Russell. Thank you. I'm glad that you're having this public forum.
Hi, my name is Joe Broach. I teach over at the university and live in the university district and primarily get around by bicycle. And I'm not as long a term Missoula resident as a lot of you are. I've been here about 8 years, and I moved from a town that was similar in size to Missoula and which did a wonderful job of moving high volumes of traffic through the central city. but it was a lousy place to live. And the central city was not a place that has the sort of life that Missoula does. So even at my age, I suppose I have a warning from experience that simply focusing on moving traffic through a central city certainly is not the only goal, and maybe not even should be the primary one. I think the current three-lane configuration has made some strides toward making it a more friendly place. And I think being friendly and a place where people can meet, communicate on the street is something a city street should do. The striping is a mess. Anyone who has used it knows that, whether you're on a bicycle or in a car. But what I've noticed is even though there's a lot of confusion, when I'm in that space that should be striped as a bike lane right now, now that there's not another lane of traffic right next to motorists, they notice me. We make eye contact and we figure it out. And to me, that's that's part of a city space. That's my comment. I also have a question, and maybe this is something that Phil Smith might take up. But I had some concern with what I could see, and I couldn't see it clearly yet. In the three-lane model where there will be a free right turn from Toole onto Broadway there, I can imagine the situation that the bicyclist then is going to be trapped. Currently it's kind of tricky, but it works because there's a stop sign there, traffic stops and looks. And when they look, we make eye contact and everything's okay. But if it's a free turn, I envision the problem of cars quitting that step of looking to negotiate with bicyclists, and that puts us in a tough spot, and that makes it harder for motorists and for bicyclists. So thanks a lot, and I appreciate the discussion.
My name is Ford Johnson. I work right in the area, right where the traffic thing is, and I live on Toole and Hawthorne right there. And one of my objections to this system we got now is that the traffic going east, you're getting a lot of traffic that is turning onto Toole Street that don't want to go down Toole Street. They want to stay on Broadway, but they can't because they're trapped. And then you have to be aware at all. You have to really plan way ahead of time. If you're going to stay on Broadway, you have to plan way ahead of time in your mind. And if you're like me, a lot of drivers aren't focusing 2 minutes ahead, And so what you've got is you've got Toole Street is really swell. The traffic on Toole Street. Now on the south side is Toole Street. On the other side of Come and Go, there's apartments with lots of families and lots of kids, and these kids have to cross the street, Toole Street. And it's made a mess out of Toole and Spruce, made a total mess. And so I think that's one of the solution that you've contrived here. It has thrown the problem, a great deal of the problem, over on Toole Street. And I don't know just exactly what the solution is, but I think that the solution we have now certainly isn't working on Toole and Spruce. It's made it much worse.
My name's Phil Condon, and all of the above. I drive probably most of all. I walk, I bike, I take the bus. But I'm also the chair of the Volunteer Citizen City of Missoula Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Board. And we have previously, as volunteers, we talk about these things all the time, we have previously voted to support the three-lane option. But tonight I certainly won't, I'm just speaking for myself because we haven't had time to evaluate these new three options, and we probably will begin to at our May 1st public meeting. So I'm just speaking for myself, but looking at these three options, and I really appreciate all the effort that went into laying this out. I think it makes a lot of things clear and shows us what the options are. The first thing I see is the cost. If I'm adding these up right, you're talking 3-lane, $800,000, 4-lane, $1.5 million, 5-lane, $900,000, but $160,000 has already been paid on the 3-lane. So cost effective, If all other things were equal, the 3-lane certainly seems to me to be the option. What I keep coming back to is it sounds like there's a notion of making Broadway or letting it become this through-town expressway, which maybe it was on its way to becoming a de facto. But what I keep thinking is, where does it go? It goes downtown. Is that what we want? I mean, you could have an expressway, chain link the thing off and make it 5 or 6 lanes and get people across town like a freeway, but ultimately it's going to our downtown, and we're putting all kinds of efforts into making Missoula downtown viable. And long range out, this area is becoming part of the downtown urban area. And to me the question is it going to be a human-friendly place or a fast-moving traffic place? So when I see the options that don't have any bike lanes, and when I also see something else I don't believe anybody else has mentioned, this distance between pedestrian space, sidewalk, and nearest driving lane on both the 4 and the 5 lane, 1 to 2 feet, up to 5 feet in some places, depending on how fast the traffic's moving. That really doesn't make pedestrians feel safe, or it doesn't feel like a place you want to be walking, or you want to be walking your kids along the street. I'm not even talking about the dangers of crossing, but we all know that feeling. If you're walking on a sidewalk and 2 feet away there's traffic going 35 miles an hour legally or illegally, it's not conducive to people. So that really concerns me. And one other thing on the comparison chart, the left turn access, both the 3-lane and 5-lane say yes, but on the 5-lane, it's a left turn across 2 lanes coming at you, which is a much different thing. So when I look at it from my experience in studying it before, I certainly think the 3-lane is better. I would just say, looking at the 5-lane, to my mind, well, there's no point in having a charrette at that point about a vision, but at least if the vision is to be human-friendly or long range about what a community might look there, because you're basically just saying this is an expressway, this is like another freeway. And lastly, I have no idea about this, I've not talked to anybody, but I'm sure somebody does. Long range, Steve was talking about the long range traffic projections. We all know how much the town is growing. Long range, isn't there possibility the freeway, which is a limited access, controlled access, non-pedestrian thoroughfare, that the freeway might have to be expanded, and there's federal money for that possibly, rather than trying to take care of it in an area where we want people to feel safe. So thank you.
Todd Tibbetts. I live at Burton and Broadway, and I wanted to, since a lot of discussion, the emphasis was pedestrian safety crossing, and I wanted to specifically comment on a person in a wheelchair crossing. What I liked about, I think perhaps all the scenarios, was the change with the crossing at Burton. It was moved from the east side of Burton to the west side, and that's a lot closer to a lot of the complexes that house people with disabilities. And for myself, it saved me one extra street to cross. I don't need to cross Burton too, besides Broadway now. I like that move. I had a problem with the existing crossing, pedestrian crossing at Toole. It was a stair-stepped looking thing in plan view. In a chair, you can imagine in a car, if you had to turn like that to get through, your visibility isn't very good. And not only that, once you got across that island on Broadway, you then had to cross Toole. And I know that this would change with the light there. It would slow down traffic, but the visibility looking down the two directions there, it's very difficult for someone in a chair. You got to turn your chair one way, go back and turn the other way, And in that time, you had to have pretty good judgment there isn't cars going to come before you attempted to cross. And I know they had put a island on Tool there, but it's apparently what I saw was going to be a free flow traffic there. I just have a little bit of concern there yet. I also feel that, in my mind, a charrette would have been good for. How many of you really get a good understanding looking at these plan view drawings, how this is really going to look? I myself would have liked some perspective or profile drawings to see how the streetscape would actually look. And charrette, there was one person in the Missoulian that pointed out something very unique, actually a 3-lane going one way down West Broadway, which I thought was very ingenious. Needs to be looked at more thoroughly, and I wonder if, Steve, had you looked at that at all, that scenario?
The 3-lane, or the one-way couplet with Spruce and Tool one way and Broadway one way has been discussed. It's not in our transportation plan. It's not on the table now as in current, but it certainly is intriguing for long-term discussions. And that's the type of venue, charrette is the type of venue where that could be discussed.
What I see the benefits of that, it would be the 3-lane that's existing now, which would give you free flow traffic with vehicles. There would be room for bicycles as well. Landscaping, obviously, there'd be extra room to do that. And the local businesses would have still comparatively good flow for traffic for their customers, I would imagine. It was just a scenario I thought was interesting. Thank you.
My name is Linda Smith. I was just going to drop this off because I have another meeting at 7, but I thought I'd just stay and say it in person. So it was to the City Council representatives and Mayor Engen and I guess everybody else. The safety data after the 6 months trial run, reducing the number of lanes on Broadway to 3 and resulting in 0 injuries is so compelling that I strongly support completing the project. And restriping the lanes and adding landscaping and appropriate lighting would beautify this gateway to the downtown. I work downtown, and 4 or 5 lanes, in my mind, coming into the downtown doesn't complement the feel of the downtown. It doesn't welcome pedestrians to the downtown, and it actually endangers them because cars drive much faster when there are more lanes. Now that we know reducing the number of lanes ensures pedestrian safety and reduces the number and severity of car crashes, prioritizing improved access to businesses on Broadway is in order. It's not easy to balance access to Broadway for all of us. Businesses, people in wheelchairs, people walking, people in cars, people on bikes, but safety is the highest priority for all of us. And that's why we have a city council and a mayor to make the hard decisions that provide safe transportation options for all citizens, which ultimately helps reduce traffic congestion. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Bo Larkin, 703 Ronald here in Missoula. Thank you to everybody for putting this meeting on, and I'm glad to see turnout from everybody. I was part of a grassroots group in a year and 2 years ago that tried to get support for this project before we started doing it. And the early implementation and the way it was done, which I had no knowledge about, it just started happening, it made me very angry because it added challenges to business and it really killed public support for what I hoped for doing more projects like this in the future. I was so disappointed. When I heard, as I hope a lot of you have, if it's true, that the city was kind of pressured into this from bigger forces, I was really disheartened and super disappointed because everybody was so angry. Public trust in future projects was injured, and because of the work that I did to try and get this project going, I really feel some responsibility for the injury that I know some businesses took on from this. I read about it, I heard about it, I talked to some of these people. The worst part of this, though, is that we had no opportunity to see that the 3-lane project could work well, and I believe it still could. I don't think that businesses would have had the hardship had signs been in place early, had the project been done properly, like the city really planned on doing, and we were pressured into doing otherwise. I'm a high school teacher, I'm a delivery driver, and I'm a bicycle commuter. The only time I drive is when I'm delivery driving. I don't own a car. I'm concerned about safety, the high school kids and anyone else who's on bikes and cars, pedestrians. I'm concerned about good traffic flow because I like the business community in Missoula and I want to see it thrive. I'm also concerned about transportation equity, given that 4- and 5-lane programs do not allow bikes on Broadway. When this project began, the hurried conversion to a 3-lane that started last fall, I was driving it every day as a delivery driver. I deliver here to St. Pat's all the time. I deliver all over West Broadway. It was a debacle. I mean, people were all over the place. Nobody knew what to do. There were near fender benders all the time. Everybody was angry. But now, just a short time later, I still drive it every day. Most everybody seems to have adjusted. There aren't people trying to make a right turn out of the lane that goes to Toole Street and stopping up traffic, not as much as there used to be. People stay in the one lane. People get to Orange Street like they need to. People turn out of Toole onto Broadway pretty effortlessly. It seems to be a good adjustment. It seems to work. The businesses, to me anyway, they seem to look like they're all still there. I know some of you lost a lot of money on this, and that I don't like that. But it seems like the businesses are still there. It looks pretty much the same. Some of the buildings look a lot nicer. What I encourage and what I want to see happen is let's give the city a chance to do it the way they originally planned, do the 3-lane conversion that looks good, that is well marked and well striped, that allows drivers so that they don't have to think ahead 2 minutes and plan for it. They see a sign that tells them where to go. They don't have to be wondering about it. They know what they need to do. I think the city can do this right. I have a lot of trust in the city and the people of this city and how we do things. Mostly, I think that change and growth is inevitable in this town, and managing that growth is the key to protecting the livable Missoula we all love. Thank you very much.
I'm Linda McCarthy. I'm the director of the Missoula Downtown Association, and we have about 400 businesses that belong to our organization. I have more questions than answers, of course. My first question is targeted towards people who are really using bicycles, and the question is, if the riverfront trail system was completed between Burton and Orange Street, would bicyclists use the riverfront trail system instead of the roadway for commuting? Why or why not? Okay. And maybe somebody else can answer that, Jim or Bob or somebody. 2, Steve, do we have data to evaluate the number of bikes using Broadway before or after implementation of the 3-lane? Another question is targeted towards businesses that are located in the affected area. Do we have data to evaluate the economic loss or potential economic loss to these businesses since implementation, and should this or should this not be considered? And I'm struggling with defining why there is such a difference between the 4-lane roadway that we have east of Orange versus the 4-lane roadway that we have west of Orange. Is it the width of the roadway? Is it the speed of the vehicles? I cross Broadway 2 to 6 times a day. And my office is, a second-floor office right on Broadway and Woody. And so I see lots of traffic in and out of the affected area at Orange. And I always feel safe crossing Broadway as a 4-lane. And I could see where people don't feel safe crossing Broadway on the west side of Orange. And I'm struggling to figure out why is there such a different aesthetic or a different feel to it. And I'm wondering, how can we simultaneously make West Broadway more human-friendly and more efficient in moving vehicles? Because I think those are 2 really important goals. And I wanted to address your comments, Bob, about road diets in other communities. They haven't been successful in some other communities that they have been implemented in, and we have yet to find an example where it's been implemented adjacent to a river that serves as a natural divider in the community. So I would challenge you to find an example where that has been successful. And over the course of the last 3 or 4 years that we've been working on this project, research, et cetera, we did find 3 other communities in the United States, one in Washington, one in California, and one in Florida, where road diets weren't well received. And I guess now we probably have one in Montana. So thank you to you and your staff. I know you've done a lot of work on this project.
Thanks. You had some good questions, and see if I can address them in a general way. You asked about bike count before and after. And Phil, I don't know, Phil Smith, our bike ped coordinator, I don't know if you've got any statistical data on that. What we do is have anecdotal information. I've been out on the site. For instance, on March 12th, from 12:10 to 12:25, that 15-minute period, in the vicinity of Broadway at Cedar Street by GMT, 3 pedestrians, 4 bicycles in that 15-minute period over lunch hour. And so that gives you some idea of the bike activity in that slice of time. I don't have a comparison before the project. As far as the difference, a very good question about what's the difference between east and west of Orange Street? And I think that there's a variety of features, but the biggest one is the activity in the downtown, the vicinity of the courthouse, the restaurants, the pedestrian movements creates an expectation of drivers that there's something different in that vicinity. There's also the series of stoplights. So the mix of the stoplights and the activity of the pedestrians crossing, I believe, is the character to the east of Orange on Broadway. You go west of Orange, yes, there's less pedestrian activity, current configuration, less of the stoplights, and that's one of the significant changes there.
Let me just add to Steve's comment and answer one question that you'd asked Linda that he didn't answer yet. Another significant factor in the downtown area is that there's almost bumper-to-bumper parking on both sides of the street, which again creates a feeling of a little more of a crowded, slow zone, which we don't have on the west side of Orange Street. The question that you didn't get to, Steve, was what about if there were a bike trail on the river or along the river between Orange Street and Russell? Count me among the very first people in town to jump up and down and say, hooray, wouldn't that be absolutely wonderful? We found that to be just about impossible to construct, and some 3, 4, 5 years ago when we built sidewalks on the south side of Broadway, our hope was that we'd be able to continue the trail that's under the Orange Street Bridge along the river and connect it to the Shady Grove Trail. Some of you know already that on the immediate south side of Broadway there, that's a former garbage dump. And our ability to even put a wide sidewalk in was substantially limited because there wasn't a place to build it. And we were able to get in some places a 6-foot sidewalk in there, which really doesn't suffice as a two-way trail. So Linda, the answer to your question is probably a lot of people would love to use that if there were such a facility. But in terms of the design and engineering and expense of it, it's just not going to happen. Wish it would, but if it ever happens, it's going to be a hugely expensive process and environmental issues and all the rest. So we're really pretty well stuck with being on street with bicycles in that stretch of Broadway.
My name is Jason Weiner. I drive a car. I ride my bike. Sometimes I walk. I wanted to begin just by addressing your comment, ma'am, that the configuration hasn't been well received, and I haven't exactly heard a groundswell of support for tearing it up and replacing it. Definitely heard some of those voices, and I'd like to see those concerns addressed, but I don't get the feeling that, if the mayor doesn't change it back to the way it was, he's going to be torn limb from limb or recalled or something like that. When I came over here, I came up over the Orange Street Bridge from my place of business, and I had to come up to Broadway and take a left-hand turn on the street here, and I was terrified because all I've heard about is how it's impossible to make a left-hand turn, and here I am right after 5 o'clock there's no way I'm going to be able to get across Broadway because there's going to be a wall of traffic. But I pulled up to the stop sign, and then I made a left-hand turn, and I couldn't believe it. And what that suggests to me is that perhaps the rhetoric of this discussion has outpaced the experience that people are having on the ground. At least my experience has been different. With regard to the alternatives, I'm really not interested in a Broadway that doesn't include a bike lane. I just don't see how that's equitable, given that we all pay for the roads and some of us use them in different ways. And I guess my concluding comment is that I would really like to see this finished, because the last thing I want to do is give up another day like today in order to talk about it.
Hi, my name is Dave Wisnan. I just wanted to make a comment about something I noticed on my way here, just like he did. So I came up Higgins and came down through the downtown area, riding north on my bike, and I really didn't feel safe. You know, that's the 4-lane area. I didn't know if a door was going to open in front of me, if I was going to get doored. There were cars whizzing by real fast, and then I made my turn onto Broadway. And once I got past Orange Street, I mean, there's a big wide lane. I really just felt great. Felt really safe, and I think there's a lot of obstacles, you know, with pedestrian crossing safety and stuff, but I think we can work it through. And I'd really like to, like everyone said, just really see it done correctly, because it's pretty confusing right now. But so yeah, I really like the 3-lane option, and I think it's a way to give people incentive to bike and get around in a more sustainable manner, which is what you need to do to, I think, to get people to start doing that and get out of their cars. So, thanks.
Hi, I'm Gail Gitchie, and I live one long block off of Broadway on Cooper Street, and I also represent this district, which is House District 99 in the legislature. And I am really happy to see all these folks here tonight and to be able to talk about this again, although I concur with the guy who spoke earlier that it'd be nice to wrap this up. But just some observations as somebody who lives close to Broadway. So I walk and bike more often than I drive, but I certainly drive it as well. It is definitely slower. The traffic is definitely slower on Broadway with the new configuration, even though it's messy and hard to follow, which we obviously have heard a lot about that tonight. So we need to fix that, and we can do that with some signage and the correct striping, et cetera. But I have noticed, I expected a huge increase of traffic on Cooper, because I'm just a long block off, and I work at home mostly. So I actually get to view it pretty often, and I do. And I have not noticed any increase there, which has been a great thing. Now, I think there has been some increase on Toole, and somebody spoke to that earlier. But people are mostly staying on Broadway. They're hanging with it. They're toughing it out. It has been confusing, but I do think we need to finish it. And clearly, from all the folks who biked here tonight, I don't know if you all noticed, but I biked here tonight, there's way more bikes out there than there actually is places to lock them up. So folks are biking, even in this neighborhood. I don't bike a lot on Broadway, but I certainly like biking on it better now than I did before. In terms of businesses, I utilize a lot of businesses on Broadway. I get my oil changed at Valvoline. I've bought presents for just about everybody I know at Wooden Images. I get my health care at Blue Mountain Clinic. And if anything, it's easier for me now, because I often am on foot or bike to go there. It's easier for me now to access those businesses. So I certainly have not stopped using and won't stop using businesses on Broadway. We need them. They're the beginning of downtown. I guess the other comment I want to make is, or question actually, and I think maybe this is for Mayor John Ingen or for Steve, is the traffic light at Broadway and Toole or Broadway and Burton, is that actually on the table? And could somebody speak to that? Which configuration would that fit into, and how would that work?
It fits into, Gail, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, it could fit into the 4-lane with median. It could fit into the 3-lane, and I think the 5. I mean, I think it fits in all the configurations. It's unfunded, so we're talking something on the order of, what, $250,000 or $300,000. And it's something that MDT wouldn't recommend, but it's on the table.
And then I guess maybe a follow-up to that is if we stay with the 3-lane, or at least give it a shot and try it and see if it works, isn't it safer actually not to have a crosswalk but not a light there? Or is that not the studies I've heard or seen?
It's a more complex question. There's stoplight creates different sets of expectations. The yellow lights, red light running, and those types of things. But it does positively stop the majority of traffic. And so there is some statistics that vehicular crashes increase with signalization if it's inappropriately placed. What is the discussion is how appropriate is the placement of the signal there. I wouldn't say it has different features. I wouldn't quantify it as better or worse for safety. It has different features for both, for all modes of traffic.
Thank you.
Gail, that signal is on the table for the first time in my experience. So, new to the mix tonight. So. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm Jim Boggs, and I live on East Broadway, so I end up, cutting across town on Broadway quite a bit in cars, but also I bike a lot and occasionally walk. And I just want to put in a word again, adding to those who have already spoken in favor of finishing off the 3-way configuration and giving it a chance to work. And I see it partly, since I bike and walk, I am concerned with equity and safety. But I think we also have to look at it in terms of the long-range livability of Missoula. And I think all of us have been to places like San Jose or Los Angeles or other cities where the city has been just built around cars, and the only consideration is getting cars from one place to another. And there's just no question about what that detracts from the livability of the community. And communities all across the country are beginning to think in new ways and thinking about different alternatives. And I'm just very pleased that Missoula is a little bit ahead of that curve. And so it's these decisions we're making now really feed into what kind of community we're going to be in the future. And we don't want to go down the LA route. And so I think this is just a great move, a great creative alternative. The roads, when you think about them, are our community's largest public space. And so, again, thinking in terms of equity, all the different people who use them and all the different ways they use them, I think is really the right way to go. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Katie Pritchard, and I'm a student at the university here, and I ride my bike or walk. And I guess this comment is in response to your question earlier about if the riverfront trail was completed, would bicyclists use it more? And that's an option I haven't really thought of before. I've just newly, I think with the new footbridge that's been installed, been using the bike path more. But I don't like thinking that I have to go on a separate path entirely to get to those businesses. And I used to never go to businesses on Broadway for the same reason that I don't bike to Reserve. It's frightening and it's not fun and it's gross. And so I think lately with, even though it's messy and I think cars get confused with the lanes, it just works a lot better for people. And I'm going to more businesses. And when my family comes to town, I take them to those businesses. And so I think as a student, and many students do have cars but ride their bikes too, I mean, we're a big pool of people. And riding the riverfront trail is really nice, but I think that the current work on Broadway with 3 lanes is the closest option we have to being done, and I just wonder when it will be completed and when the riverfront trail will be completed, because right now it seems like this option's working for the most people and probably hopefully will be done before I leave college. So that's it.
Okay, my name is Travis Hoffman. First of all, I want to speak from my personal perspective about the three-lane configuration. I personally think that it is too short-sighted. We know that the amount of traffic it can hold is going to be overcome in the foreseeable future. And so I think that it is a great waste of money to throw it down there right now when we're going to have to tear it up and put another one of these options in place in the next few years, however long that may be. I mean, if we're in the business of wasting money, give me the money. I'm sure I can find plenty of uses for it. Throwing on a different hat, though, and representing Summit, pedestrian safety is what we're after. And the past 6 months, there hasn't been any fatalities or pedestrian accidents, but you have to take that data with a grain of salt. It was winter. There's not a lot of pedestrians crossing that during the winter time. So that data, I don't know if it's a really strong argument for or against either side. The main goal when you're crossing the street, and the main goal for safety when you're trying to cross the street, is getting the traffic to stop. And we've been asking for a traffic signal for 12 or 13 years, and we're still asking for a traffic signal. We believe that that's the safest way to get across the street. In any one of these configurations, whether it be a 3, or 4, or 5 lane, a stoplight, a regularly timed traffic signal is what we're asking for. What we've been asking for 13 years, and what we believe to be the safest way to get pedestrians across the street. And like I said, with whatever configuration that goes with, a traffic light is what we've been asking for and what we're still asking for.
My name is Ray Doty. I grew up with Missoula, and I've seen all the traffic that anybody can see in this town, I think. I worked traffic myself. I was a police officer. I was a traffic officer. And this is the third meeting that I have gone through as far as traffic is concerned. I was on the committee for the Russell Street Bridge. We recommended a 4-lane bridge. We got a 2-lane bridge. And the Madison Street Bridge, or the Orange Street Bridge, I worked on that part-time. And I'm very happy with what resulted in that. And the traffic now, I think the 3-lane will work once it's a permanent structure. Right now it's understandably a mess, but that's because of the lack of the striping and so forth. The only bottleneck I see is right there at Toole, and something I will mention that nobody has mentioned, and that's the tourists coming into town when they come in from the west, and I don't think they have enough warning until they get there, and all of a sudden they're on the Toole Street side and they want to go downtown. And what do? They go downtown, they cut it right in front of you. And it's understandable, but I think there's a permanent structure that can be worked out. Thank you.
Well, I'm John Wilkins. I represent Ward 4 on the City Council. As you can see, I'd like the 4-lane. But more important than that even is the whole reason this thing came up was to get pedestrians across the street. And I worry when I hear that a traffic light's on the table. I'd rather it pushed up where the dessert should be, because that is something we really need. I have tried to cross that street. I was wheelchair bound at a time, and I tell you, I'd be scared to go across that street even now with 3 lanes. It's nice on a nice summer day. When it's raining and when it's dark out, it's a scary thing to try to do. And I think that's what these meetings were all about. That's why we shrunk it down to 3 lanes, which I still don't think is a good idea. But irregardless of all that, whether it's a 3-lane, 4-lane, or 5-lane, we need a safe pedestrian crossing there. And that's what I'm for, a safe pedestrian crossing. That should be our main goal here.
My name's Jim Sayre. I just had a couple questions. Well, one thing is, it just seems like the 5-lane is kind of a straw man and a non-starter. I mean, given where this whole conversation started. And so I don't even know if anybody will focus on that in the future. But it seems like we should zero in on the 4-lane with the median. And I guess my first question is, it looks like the additional cost of doing this would be, from what I understand, a repayment back to the state of the money spent on the 3-lane. And then it looks like $800,000 for project development and basic construction costs is your estimate. Is that right, Steve or John? Or?
It's partially correct. The repayment is undetermined. It really is unknown what portion and how much, if at all, there would be any repayment.
So the state may not ask for its money back on the 3-lane?
We have some state representatives here. I'm not prepared to make any specifics on a repayment. Okay. The other ones are cost estimates based on current construction costs, summer of '06. And construction cost inflation has been outpacing our general inflation rate. So this is, if we were to do this quickly and locally, it would be in this range of cost.
Okay. Because is your contract for the 3-lane affected by that? For the rest of the construction that has to take place, is that affected by rising costs, or is that a locked-in cost?
The 3-lane's under contract now.
So the city would bear no further financial burden if it went ahead with building out the 3-lane? I mean,
that's correct. Okay. There's other issues at the table besides this immediate cost, but that's correct.
Okay.
3
so
lanes.
Just from a budget point of view, that there's no additional cost. And then I was curious, if you did the 4-lane with the median, or even the 5-lane, what would be the approval process for that with the state, and how long would that take?
That's a good question.
The BT guys in back are smiling.
Again, it's new ground. We don't have schedules, and so I don't have an answer for that specifically.
And how long did it take to get the 3-lane approved through MDT?
Several years.
Okay.
There was delays beyond MDT, but there was several years of project development. And typically it takes several years to go through state process for project development.
Okay.
Jim, part of that has to do with if there are federal dollars involved in this project. If there are not federal dollars, then the process is different. So.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
I just got one comment to add. What if we just, to get a stoplight, what if we just, for us, to get a stoplight there at Broadway and Burton, couldn't we hold like bake sales and stuff for ourselves just to, and then we wouldn't have to worry about Helen and all their rigmarole. I mean, I'd like to just do this and get it done rather than worry about what Helena thinks. Otherwise, I'm going to bring somebody from Helena here, and I'm going to sit them in a chair and tighten them down and make them go across.
But, and, Sheila, your point about, it's easier if it's our money. In terms of bake sales, you better hope I'm the customer a lot of the time. But yeah, it's easier when it's local money. Yes, ma'am, and that's one of our challenges, is trying to find money. Yeah. So we're going to look. No matter what we do, we're going to need to look for money on it. So we'll be on that. Please step right up. Thank you.
I'm Andrea Dahl, and I'm one of those who was almost hit at the intersection. I spoke to you earlier this year about it. It's not safe with just the crosswalk there. The traffic with 2 lanes is so determined to keep on going that the pedestrians are really endangered. I also am a bus rider here in town, and I get to work daily riding Route 9, which goes on Broadway. And the bus used to be one of the first ones to get downtown every morning. And I have had several incidents since this change in route. The bus is running a lot slower because of the heavy traffic. I'll get downtown, and I've had a few times when I've had to wait for another bus to get to work instead of being able to switch immediately. And it's the heavy traffic. They can't go any faster. The traffic is going back to back. The buses aren't able to pull out, back out into the street as quickly as they usually would. So I hope you'll take that into mind when you're going over the plans.
Thank you.
My name is Casey Day, and I work with Summit Independent Living Center. I was looking at the layout of the 3-lane, 4-lane, and 5-lane, and I don't see the width, the size of the widths of the medians. Could you address that?
The width of the median's approximately 8 feet wide.
Thank you.
And it would vary at different locations. Basically, the lane widths would be uniform. We'd have the same lane width from end to end. We would vary the median. Where the curb allows extra width, we can go above 8 feet. Where we drop that median goes to lesser for left turn movements.
Thank you.
Rod Austin. Couple observations. One is I think that most everybody would agree that what we have now was put in hastily, but one of the things that did come from it that was probably helped from a safety standpoint and would perhaps change some of the measurement we have on this chart is the lighting that went in around California. I think it changes dramatically, and more of that needs to be done regardless of what happens. And safety-wise, 2-3 years ago, there was a meeting in town with a gentleman that writes books and is internationally known for talking about Broadway road diets, Dan Burton. I sat in a meeting with him, and myself and another businessman after that meeting asked him if, in fact, a road diet would have prevented any of the deaths that took place on Broadway as it was, and he said absolutely not, because of the conditions that were there at the time, darkness and others. So a road diet would not have prevented the deaths that took place that caused us all to be here, quite frankly, by his own admission. I'm a little concerned about the numbers around Orange and Broadway. I think that was the Downtown Association's one of our main concerns to begin with. There was another comment about, and it might have been just the term used, but Broadway becoming an expressway. I don't think anybody sees Broadway as an expressway. It's a way for people to get in it and across town to get to the businesses that are along that avenue. They don't need to go 35 or 40. I would agree with that. Slowing them down would be great. And I do. One of the things that's bothered me is we know that in the not too distant future that road is going to have to be changed from what it is now, even if we complete what's out there. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that. Something needs to be done in the short term, that's for sure. But if we're 5-10 years away from needing to revisit this again, based on what I know about how hard it is to get funds to work on roadways in our community, we're so far behind it's unbelievable with what we'd like to do, what we want to do. And finding the money to do this again is going to be pretty difficult to do. Thank you.
Anybody else? Can I briefly respond to something that was said earlier about the Northern Railroad Downtown Association asked a question about bicyclists and the other trail? Come on up. I'm sorry to speak twice. I'll keep this very brief. It was raised if there was.
The question was raised, if there was a riverfront trail, would bicyclists use that and not use the bike path on Broadway, and therefore would the bike path on Broadway be not useful at that point? And this has been a concern of mine. I love bike paths. I love bike trails. As I said earlier, I bike every day. I don't own a car. My concern for a really long time with bike trails and bike paths has been, okay, cyclists, we provided you bike trails and bike paths, get off the streets. And it would be nice if we could, but when you create a river path, you end up with families, strollers, dogs, rollerbladers, people stopping and strolling, and that's what they're supposed to do on a river trail. That's exactly what they're supposed to do. Someone like me who gets to everywhere on a bicycle every day, I ride really fast. I'm a lot more like a car than like a bike, and I'm a heck of a lot more like a car than a pedestrian. Most of us that ride day in and day out every day through the city are really used to traffic, and it's not really safe for us to ride that way on a river trail. So I would say that that's why we always stand up and ask for access to streets. It's not because we think that we own the world. I know there's a lot more people in cars than there are on bikes, but it's the safest way for those of us that ride all the time, and all the friends that I have that bicycle commute, we talk about this. The safest way and the way that we all do it is on the streets, and that's why. Because we can't, sidewalks aren't good, river paths aren't good, that's going to endanger people. So, and I just wanted to address that issue.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I did have one more question. Wasn't there bike lanes on the 4-lane before we turned it to a 3-lane?
The median ends up removing.
Taking that? Okay, yeah. Okay.
Well, why can't we just not have them?
Well, then we're back to 4 lanes without the.
Oh, we've been asking for it the whole time. But everybody and stuff, we haven't asked to make it in there. And we haven't asked for anything else. Those are the only 2 things we asked for. And those are the only 2 things that we don't have.
Thank you, Sheila. Anybody else?
I had a real quick question. Is there evidence that traffic's been diverting off of Broadway onto substitutes north? Because there were some traffic counts on the wall there.
The question is there evidence of diverting traffic? No, the counts are constant on Toole, Spruce, and Phillips, before and after the project.
People aren't using them because they don't want to go through. They have to drive.
Question is, what's the count on Orange? We've got 3. We don't have counts related to this project on Orange. We take annual counts on Orange. I don't have that information with me for that north-south, but we've been looking at the east-west roads on both Broadway and the parallel roads on Spruce, Toole, and Phillips. And we can see that the volumes are constant before the project and after the project on Spruce and Toole and Phillips. No change in volumes or diversion of traffic to those side streets.
Bob?
Benefits of the 3 lanes.
So Bob, let's have you come up to the microphone, please.
Just a quick question. I mean, the original scope of this project was to go all the way to Madison Street, and the analysis I saw showed the greatest benefit actually in the Orange to Madison segment, where the flow would improve and the safety would improve, and I would get rid of the merging and diverging conflict at Orange Street. Can't we think in terms of systems? Is that a possibility? I mean, I know it's tough right now, but maybe Downtown Association, the businesses, the chamber, and others could get on board with a broadening of the scope and make this a more systematic approach?
That's the future is the next consideration. We're talking about the present tonight and the immediate future of what happens this summer. Long range, that's why a charrette or transportation planning and your continued participation in that process is going to help shape those and answer those questions.
And I got to tell you, Bob, talking about 3 lanes beyond this stretch of Broadway, that's just going to wear me plain out. And I need to have a little more life left in me. One of the things I'd like to encourage folks tonight is we now have some alternatives to consider, and we've talked about some of those alternatives. We haven't talked about them in great detail, but you've had a chance to look at them, think about them a little bit. What I'd like us to do is, if we could generally agree that we're not going to talk about all the things that have gone on in the past, but look at what's available to us in the future, look at the alternatives, and if there are alternatives to the alternatives that council or the public is interested in putting forward, I mean, this is the time to begin talking about those things. Bill, I don't know whether do you like the 5-lane better than the 4-lane? I'm not sure what you like.
I haven't looked at 5-lane thoroughly enough to really appreciate it.
Okay. I mean, that's one of the things we can start boiling down to is I like 5, I like 4, I like 3.
Aesthetically, I like 5. I'm worried about, left-hand turn.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, those are some of the things that we need to start talking about. If 4 lanes an option and we can make it work for folks and we can get general consensus and council backs it, where are we going to find the money? That's the next question. How do we want to fund it? I'm sorry? No, do you have a serious answer? Okay. Okay. Because we have serious questions, so we need serious people with serious answers. Okay? That's part of what we're doing here tonight. I take this very seriously, ladies and gentlemen. My preferred alternative is a 4-lane with medians that provide pedestrian refuge, that light up the corridor, that provide some attractiveness and some economic development opportunity. That's my preference. That doesn't matter a lick. What matters is whether we can fund it and what council believes is the right course of action. So, from tonight on, what I'd like to encourage council and all the folks who are here, all the folks who are in the audience and our staff to think about the alternatives that are here before us and how we'd like to proceed. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if those crosswalks, there are places on Broadway where you don't go to the river, You wouldn't need a median in every place, is what I'm trying to say.
That's absolutely a possibility, you bet. You wouldn't need a median in every place.
Would that give room for biking?
There may be, but throughout the corridor, that's the problem, and I think Bob would suggest that if you have a bike lane that starts and then a bike lane that stops, we're in kind of a...
No, but they could be 6 feet in one place and 4 feet in another place, because I see those bikes cutting in between cars like this. I'm sure they could do it.
Okay. I'd love to be able to do that. I don't know if we can. Okay.
I mean, if it's just one.
Yes, sir. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Vernon Bailey, and I live at 565 Burton Street, the handicap apartments at Eagle Watch Estates, along with Bruce Blattner Estates. I have here a copy of People with Disabilities, American Disabilities Act. I would like to read one paragraph, please, if you'll bear with me. Many disabled people have been discriminated against on the basis of safety. Besides forcing guests to take ground floor hotel rooms because of safety reasons, people are told they can't sit anywhere but in the back of movie houses, told they can't participate in integrated sports, told they can't go on field trips with their classmates, all under the guise of safety considerations. Most of these restrictions, it turns out, are based on no real data, but myths and stereotypes. Though a public accommodation may impose safety requirements, says the Department of Justice's rules, they have to be based on actual risks and not on mere speculation. Stereotypes are generalizations about people with disabilities. When we started, I came this thing in 2004 and made my speech. Rose Kapishke, who lives in Bruce Blattner Apartments, was violently, grotesquely run over and killed by a van that the police estimated was doing 10 to 15 miles an hour over the speed limit. The speed limit is 35. That means she was hit doing about 50 or 55 miles an hour. It took the wrecking truck a long time to get up off the wheelchair. She was thrown over 200 feet from her wheelchair when the van hit her, and she was crossing the street at Hoagieville. Deaths are not mere speculation. Stereotypes are generalizations, and that's why we want a stoplight, please. I don't care if we have 8 lanes, 10 lanes, as long as we can have a stoplight so I can feel safe when I cross that street. Goofy's has closed. Goofy's, I used to be able to go there and buy a pack of cigarettes, a bag of potato chips, a cold pop, or even a beer. Now they're closed. If I want anything, I have to cross the street on Broadway to go to the other side just to get something. And I don't feel safe with that unless I have somebody that is walking with me, because they make eye contact with the driver. I sit too low to make eye contact. Also, when I cross the street down here at Russell and Broadway, I push the button, the light comes on for the hand up, and then when it shows for the walk, it's on about 3 seconds, just long enough to get out in front of the first vehicle. And I think those things need to be looked at, please. The whole town could use a little bit of pedestrian-friendly accommodations and adjustments, in my opinion. I want to thank Mayor Engen and the rest of the people for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Mr. Wilkins, step right up.
Well, one big question, is there anything we can do immediately with the person crossing that person there on Broadway? Get the lines built better so they're more seeable? I mean, anything for a little bit better safe while we're trying to figure out what we're doing. And I appreciate what you said about the funding, because I know how that goes. And I appreciate your office giving us any advice on how we can come up with funding.
You bet, and I'll be working on that, John. I appreciate that.
My concerns right now are the safety of getting across. We took the yellow flashing lights down, at least that was something. Now we don't have nothing, so.
You know, one of the things I've thought about, and folks can tell me whether this makes any sense at all, is during some hours, I'm wondering if we should try to figure out a way to hire a crossing guard, help folks get across the street. I mean, that's one way to look at it. I don't know what the expense might be or how helpful that might be to folks. Any ideas? Would that be helpful?
I think it's better than nothing.
Yeah. Well, we can sure look into that. I mean, if that's something that would be helpful.
Another idea is maybe do like St. Pat's does right out here, is have some flags.
Buckets and flags.
So you can get it up in the air.
We can do that. We can do that tomorrow.
But some people have figure out how to hold their flags and drive it too.
Sure. Well, let's at least try it. We'll provide them for folks for whom they might work, and we'll make a phone call or two tomorrow and see whether a crossing guard might work there.
We don't want anybody to think that's a permanent solution.
No.
It's a temporary thing
No.
until we get whatever we're going to do.
Especially if I'm the crossing guard. John. Oops, sorry.
John, I'm really curious on carrying on the conversation and hearing more about your opinion on the 4-lane versus the 3-lane project. I'm in favor of seeing through with the 3-lane project for numerous reasons. Many of those are stated on this paper right here. But I'm real curious because you've mentioned several times now you're in favor of the 4-lane system. What does the 4-lane system do you have over the 3-lane system?
Less opposition. No, I mean, that's a part of it. That's a part of it, John. I mean, and that's, you know, if we're in a position where we're going to continue to spend our community's time and resources and energy talking about a system that doesn't appear to work for the folks who are disabled in using the system. I mean, there are trade-offs throughout this process. If I had my druthers, we'd have a big enough road bed for bike lanes as well. I mean, that would be my preference. If I had my druthers, we'd have Stevens Avenue, but again, that's just me. And the fact of the matter is, until we start tearing out curbs, we have some limited opportunity. One of the things we've talked about is can cyclists share the sidewalk? Can we designate a side of the sidewalk for cyclists? I mean, that's one of the things that's been tossed around City Hall. I mean, I think we're in a position where we need to be creative. I do think that today, without medians on West Broadway, there are whole stretches of the corridor where there aren't safe passages. I believe that the 4-lane system creates more safe passages, more crosswalks, and more opportunity. I think we can light it better. I think that's something that the 4-lane provides, and I think the median helps us do that as well. I think we can beautify, but that's aesthetics, and some folks don't buy that. There are pieces of this that I think make a tremendous amount of sense, but everything's a trade-off. Everything's a trade-off. And it's, you know, the conversation from the community's standpoint needs to move forward somehow. I think if we can't come up with an alternative to the 3-lane the way it's laid out and designed, we're not satisfying folks who say, I still want to cross the street and I want to cross it at more than one place or more than 2 places. And I still don't feel safe crossing it no matter what the engineers say and no matter what advocates say. I still don't feel safe crossing the street, and I've heard it again and again. I heard it tonight again. So these are all trade-offs, and part of my job, part of council's job, part of our job as a community is to weigh all of those trades and come up with something that works. And that's what we're working on here tonight, trying to come up with something that works. Doug.
No, I really do agree with you on just every point you made. I was just wondering, would there be redevelopment dollars available for some of that? Because they did the tax increment district a little while ago.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that might be one of the mechanisms.
Well, here's where the charrette comes in, and I respectfully disagree with Ms. Schaefer, because I think that we do have some real opportunity with the redevelopment agency. The only way this box gets bigger is if we have money to make it bigger. If we want to create a system that accommodates all modes of transportation in lots better ways, redevelopment money helps us do that, and a charrette gets us to that point. We start deciding whether or not we want to have, do we want additional buildings on the riverside? I don't know. We don't know that today. I don't think there's a community vision that suggests that. How long do we want the remnants of Goofies sitting there? I don't know. You know, we haven't had a conversation about that. How do the property owners feel about the long term there? I mean, these folks have some investment in property. They want the property value to go up. They want it to go down. And what's going to make the difference? And those are the questions that come into play in a charrette. You know, if we don't want trees, let's talk about it. If we do want trees, let's talk about it. You know, do we want some parkland along the riverfront? If so, can we afford it? How do we buy it? You know, all those questions come into play, and they don't get answered unless we do it in a formal way with one of these pesky experts helping us, in my humble opinion. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
I resonate with what you said about public support, and in the business that I work in, I come into contact with a lot of people. Most of them are drivers, but I don't get much support for the 3-lane. When I talk to them, it's like in 2 different worlds. So I just, I think you're absolutely right when you say public support.
Well,
Listening here, you think public support is all 3-lane. I don't hear much of it in business.
And I can tell you that in my job, I can line up 5 people who want to do a 4-lane, and every one of them will have a different version of the 4-lane that they want to talk to me about. So, again, that's part of our job, is trying to build consensus and find something that's the least painful it can be and the most practical it can be for the community. And that is, unfortunately, not easy. But nobody told us it'd be easy. That's why we're here. That's why we're asking each other difficult questions. That's why we're passionate about the things we're talking about here this evening. And all that is okay. All that is okay. But at some point, we need to act. And my concern is if we're going to linger on what came before and we're going to talk about who did what when, we're not moving forward. And I think it's time to move forward. And I think you all are capable of that. And I think we're capable of that. I know our staff is ready. Yes, ma'am.
Explain the charrette to us so we understand it better.
Sure. There's the example that I'm familiar with is the riverfront triangle. It's what we call it. And it's the area that's bordered by the river, you know, where the old Fox Theater was, and then there was a Holiday Station there, Super America when I was growing up, and yeah, Mustard Seed, and so that whole triangle area. And the city had worked with St. Patrick Hospital and other property owners there to kind of talk about what we ought to do with this, because we had some redevelopment money. We owned a piece of it, the city owned a piece of it. There were a number of owners, and we had no idea how we could make anything come together. We had a number of proposals come forward, and they all crashed for one reason or another. Either there was a regulatory problem, or we remembered that we were on a dump as part of the problem. So we contracted for a charrette, and I won't pretend for a minute to understand why charrettes cost as much as they do, but they do. I mean, consultants are expensive. You have to demand a good product at the end. So we filled a room this size at least with folks who were interested in what goes on that property. Some of them own the property, some of them were government folks, some of them were real estate folks. I mean, it was a real mix of souls, and that's part of what a charrette is getting that right mix of souls. So you don't have just one opinion. You have lots of opinions, and a good consultant can extract really good ideas from folks, lots of really good ideas from folks, and help boil them into something that makes sense. What we got out of that charrette process, which took a day rather than some of our planning processes, which can take years and years, a charrette takes a short amount of time and you get an end product. In this case, we got a recommendation for what the community, generally speaking, thinks that property, that land, that piece of our community ought to look like in the long term. From that, we were able to say, you know what, we're going to commit money, the redevelopment agency, we're going to go ahead and commit money to cleaning up the dump. So that's why you see the big hole in the very attractive underused parking lot where the theater and Super America used to be there. But part of making all that work was knowing that the dump was there and knowing that we needed to clean it out. And that doesn't happen without kind of a larger vision. You know, I think the same thing holds true for the West Broadway corridor, and we're not going to stop with the charrette. We're not going to stop at Russell. We're going to go all the way to Mullen Road. Excuse me. So what happens along there? I mean, is the hotel business still good along that stretch? We're going to hear from folks. You know, are your businesses still good there? Is that where you would be if you were going to start over again? Would you like to have the opportunity to use your property in another way? Are there ways that the redevelopment agency might be able to help you with that? I mean, those are some of the questions that come into play as well. You know, maybe Shane's had this idea of moving out of fire safety equipment and into sporting goods. I mean, you know, he may have all sorts of dreams we don't know about, and some we might be able to help with. Careful, I have to be careful where I tread there. So the charrette is really a long-term vision, and I know it sounds a little touchy-feely, and I know that some folks worry that these things are wastes of money, but I think this is a real opportunity for us to look at that part of downtown in kind of the same way we looked at the more traditional parts of downtown and made some choices about how we wanted to grow there. You know, you've been around long enough in this town to know that there never used to be a tree on Higgins Avenue, you know, and now there are, and it's really attractive, and you see life there, and it's changed, and that's because folks had vision and interest and passion. So charrette helps us sort of define and refine that.
But I think you should go beyond Mullen Road, because I know to get into this turn on tool, to avoid the turn on tool, you have to be way out. So you better start out there on phone.
You're just making my work harder, aren't you?
Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks, Todd. Todd?
Well, Mayor Regan,
Please call me John.
the strength too is visually. There's profile renderings for people who are mostly, people are visually oriented anyway,
Yeah.
to see. Don't make drawings to show you what's
Absolutely, and that's part of the charrette as well. And I agree with you that it would be helpful to see some more carefully rendered views. Unfortunately, the clock ticks. These consulting engineers, they'll kill you. So everything you want out of them costs another X number of dollars. So we've tried to combine a sensitivity to our budget in this process as well. And I got to tell you, I'm really proud of the folks in Public Works for all their help, and Ginny's help, and everyone's help in putting all this together. I think it really helps to be able to look at something rather than just talk about it. And these folks have been here since early this afternoon, and they've been at this for a long time, trying to figure out how to present this so that it'd be meaningful for all of you this evening. So I really appreciate our staff working on that.
And sometimes I have me stop like that. They make it worth for the drivers at Jerry Road. Some drivers are looking at the lights that he had. They are not looking at the road.
Yeah.
People say that they look at the lights other than the road. So having too many stoplights are not going to be good for anything.
You're starting to sound like a traffic engineer. Be careful. Because they'll tell you that as well, yeah. And there are some folks for whom yellow means go fast. Oh, I appreciate that, and we're sensitive to that. I really appreciate you coming out on a beautiful Missoula evening, what may be the only one we have this year, so thank you all very much. I'm going to stick around if you'd like to talk. Feel free. I'll hang around here until nobody wants cookies or coffee anymore. So thank you very much, folks. Thank you, Steve. Same to you.